Will you support? You have to tell me what is my decision and what is not my decision. I said you don't have to try to. You think you got a gotcha with Tom Homan, our borders, who's been out there fighting for our country since Donald Trump took office. I'm trying to ask a question, regular order, please. And you don't have to defer to the FBI director to pass the buck. So I'm asking you, will you support a request so that the committee, or indeed, I believe the American people should be able to see that video or audio tape? Will you support that request? Will you apologize to Donald Trump? I guess the answer is you won't support that after you now know that Joe Biden tried to cover up Biden's snorts involvement with... Excuse me. Let me do this because I think it's valuable that the American people get a sense of what you've refused to answer today. So these are just some of the questions you refuse to answer or have answered with personal attacks on members of this committee. You were asked whether you consulted with career ethics lawyers as you promised you would do during your nomination hearing when you approved the president receiving a $400 million gift from the Qataris. You refused to answer that question. You were asked who or what role you may have played, or who played the role in asking that Trump's name be flagged in any of the Epstein documents gathered by the FBI. You refused to answer that question. You were asked whether Homan kept the $50,000 bribe money. You refused to answer that question. You were asked whether Homan paid taxes on the $50,000 bribe money. You refused to answer that question. You were asked, did career prosecutors find insufficient evidence to charge James Comey? You refused to answer that question. You were asked, how are military strikes on these boats in the Caribbean legal? And you refused to even answer that question. You were asked, excuse me. You were asked, did you discuss indicting James Comey with the president? You refused to answer that question. You were asked, did you approve the firing of any trust lawyers who disagreed with the Hewlett Packard merger? You refused to answer that question. You were asked whether you support a restoration fund for violent insurrections to attack the Capitol on January 6th. You refused to answer that question. You were asked whether you were firing career professionals, career prosecutors, just because they worked on January 6th investigations. You refused to answer that question. You were asked by my California colleague whether you believe government officials, like immigration officials, have to abide by court orders. You wouldn't even answer that question. This is supposed to be an oversight hearing. Oversight. Excuse me. You can attack me after my time is over. He's attacked all of us, including President Trump. You can attack me later. And I know you've got plenty of canned attacks. We've heard them all day today. This is supposed to a canned regular order.
I stated earlier, I was not in office. I was not confirmed when that was handled.
So does that
Deputy Attorney General Blanch and Director Patel said that there was no evidence that Tom Homan committed.
An official took $50,000 in a bag, and this department made that investigation go away. This is supposed to be an oversight hearing when dozens of prosecutors have been fired simply because they worked on cases investigating the former president. And now the president fires in California, and this is supposed to be an oversight hearing in which members of Congress can get serious answers to serious questions about the riots in L.A., about the cover-up of corruption, about the prosecution of the president's enemies. And I think when will it that the members of this committee on a bipartisan basis demand answers to those questions and refuse to accept, lawyers, except someone can and cannot refuse to accept personal slander as an answer to those questions. Personal slander to apologize to Donald Trump for slandering him. Personal slander. Senator. May I ask unanimous consent, Madam Chair, to introduce in the record the statement of 1,000 former Justice Department officials who warned that the Comey indictment is a democracy-threatening abuse of power. May I also request unanimous consent for the introduction to the record of 282 former career officials at the Justice Department, raising an alarm, who were voluntarily or involuntarily forced to leave the department because of improper actions taken by the Department of Justice. May I introduce, with unanimous consent, the Justice Department manual that talks about when initiating and declining charges are subject to impermissible considerations. And finally, Madam Chair, may I introduce the letter from Michael Ben Ari, a career counterterrorism prosecutor, DOJ. A letter he nailed to his door, which concludes by urging officials to do the right thing for the right reasons, to follow the facts in the law, and raises the alarm that the decision to remove experienced career officials from U.S. attorneys' offices, the FBI, and critical parts of DOJJ undermines our country's abilities to counter terrorist organizations, malign nation-state actors, and countless others that seek to harm our nation and its citizens. And he believes that the priority is prosecuting the president, or are you in rather than protecting the country? May I have unanimous consent to enter these into the record? Without objection. Thank you. I yield back. Senator Moody, may I clarify one thing he entered in the record? I just want to say that I believe he entered a letter by 200 and something former employees. Well, I believe the spokesperson for that letter was also the spokesperson for Jack Smith, Senator Britt. And what started as a policy discussion quickly turned into one of the most explosive confrontations Washington had seen all year. The moment Schiff began speaking, it was clear he wasn't there for polite questions. His opening remarks sounded less like a senator seeking clarification and more like a prosecutor delivering an indictment. He spoke about the Department of Justice as if it had transformed into something unrecognizable. According to him, the department that once stood above politics had become deeply entangled in it. He pointed to reports that hundreds of career prosecutors had left their positions allegedly worried about being pushed into actions that conflicted with professional ethics. He referenced statements from former federal officials who warned that the department's power might be shifting away from law and toward political loyalty. The implication was clear. Something had changed inside the Justice Department, and Schiff wanted answers. But Schiff didn't stop with general concerns. He began building a narrative piece by piece, referencing allegations that had circulated in media reports and political discussions for months. Rumors suggested that investigations connected to powerful figures had quietly disappeared. There were claims about special treatment for certain individuals and aggressive prosecutions against others. Schiff framed the situation as a troubling reversal of the Justice Department's role. Instead of acting as a neutral institution, he argued it might now be functioning as what he described as a shield for allies and a weapon against opponents. It was a serious accusation, and everyone in the room understood the gravity of what he was suggesting. Pam Bondi sat across from him, calm but visibly aware of the stakes. She had been in the position for months and had already faced intense scrutiny. Now she was being asked to defend not just specific decisions, but the credibility of the entire department she led. As Schiff continued speaking, the hearing room grew quieter. Everyone knew that the real confrontation was about to begin. Then came the moment that shifted the entire hearing. Schiff introduced a specific allegation that immediately caught the attention of everyone watching. Reports from several major outlets had suggested that a senior official connected to immigration enforcement, Tom Homan, might have been involved in a questionable exchange involving $50,000 in cash. According to those reports, undercover investigators had allegedly documented a conversation in which the possibility of facilitating government contracts was discussed. Some accounts even suggested the interaction might have been recorded. The story had circulated widely online, though many details remained unclear and disputed. Schiff brought it up not as a rumor, but as a question he believed deserved a direct answer. He leaned forward and asked what seemed like a simple question. Was the claim true or not? Bondi responded carefully. She explained that the alleged incident had occurred before she took office. The investigation, she said, had been handled prior to her confirmation. She repeated that point more than once, emphasizing that decisions about the matter were made before she had authority over the department. But Schiff wasn't satisfied with that explanation. For him, the timing didn't change the central issue. If the allegation involved a senior official tied to the administra, he argued the American public deserved clarity. So he asked again, "Did the exchange happen?" Bondi didn't give the answer Schiff wanted. Instead, she referenced statements from Justice Department leadership and the FBI indicating that investigators had found no evidence of a crime. She also pointed to comments from administration officials who had strongly denied the allegations. But Schiff continued pressing. The same question came back again and again, each time slightly sharper than the last. Did he take the money? It became clear that Schiff's strategy was not simply about gathering information. Repeating the question created pressure. Every time the question hung in the air without a direct yes or no. It allowed doubt to linger. That doubt was powerful, especially with cameras broadcasting every moment. In political hearings, perception often matters as much as evidence, and Schiff seemed determined to create a moment that would echo beyond the room. Bondi recognized the strategy and changed her tone. Instead of continuing to defend herself against the allegation, she began pushing back against Schiff personally. She accused him of attacking individuals without proof and suggested that his line of questioning was designed more for political theater than for oversight. At one point, she defended a White House official. He had criticized, calling her one of the most trustworthy people she knew. The message was unmistakable.
The gentleman from South Carolina is recognized for 5 minutes.
May I have 20 seconds of his time?
That'll be up to the gentleman, but...
Absolutely, Madam
Thank you. Thank you. I was curious if you, Congresswoman, asked Bill Clinton that. Didn't see one tweet, not one. I didn't see one tweet when Joe Biden was in office about Bill Clinton. Didn't ask Merrick Garland anything about Epstein, not once. When he was
weak sauce.
And also, I want the record to reflect.
A policy hearing was now a direct clash between two political figures who had long stood on opposite sides of the country's most contentious debates. Still, Schiff wasn't finished. In fact, he appeared to be building towards something bigger. He shifted from the specific allegation about the cash exchange to a broader list of questions he said the Attorney General had avoided answering. One by one, he recited them in rapid succession. Questions about ethics consultations, questions about internal Justice Department decisions, questions about investigations that have been opened or closed. Each time he repeated the same phrase, "You refuse to answer that question." The rhythm was deliberate. Every repetition reinforced the idea that information was being withheld. It was a technique designed for television clips and headlines. Whether the answers truly existed or not, almost became secondary to the impression that transparency was lacking. Then Schiff introduced another topic that had been surrounded by controversy for years. Documents connected to Jeffrey Epstein. Rumors had circulated online suggesting that certain names in investigative files had been flagged or handled differently. None of those claims had been confirmed publicly, but the speculation had become a powerful political talking point. Schiff asked whether Bondi had any role in decisions related to those documents or in the way certain references were handled. Bondi declined to discuss internal matters connected to ongoing or past investigations. That response was consistent with how Justice Department officials often handle sensitive topics. But in the context of an already heated exchange, the refusal only fueled Schiff's argument that important questions were going unanswered as the back and forth intensified. The hearing room began to feel less like a place for policy discussion and more like a stage for competing narratives. Schiff portrayed a Justice Department that had lost its independence, suggesting that loyalty to political figures might now influence major decisions. Bondi portrayed something very different, a department under attack by critics who were trying to turn oversight into a partisan spectacle. Neither side appeared willing to retreat. Schiff began introducing documents into the official record, including letters from former Justice Department employees who had expressed concerns about the direction of the institution. According to those letters, some former officials believed the department's independence was at risk. Entering them into the record ensured they would become part of the official history of the hearing. But almost immediately, Bondi's allies raised questions about those documents. They pointed out that some of the individuals connected to the letters had professional ties to investigators who previously pursued cases involving President Trump. The implication was subtle but clear. If those connections existed, critics might argue the letters themselves were politically motivated. That in Washington narratives often move in parallel lines that never fully meet. One side sees warning signs of corruption, the other sees evidence of partisan attacks. During this hearing, both narratives played out at the same time, each one reinforced by the arguments being made in the room as the minutes passed. The tension never fully disappeared. Schiff continued framing the hearing as a moment of accountability, insisting that the Justice Department owed the public clear explanations. Bondi continued framing it as an example of political hostility, suggesting that the questions were designed to create headlines rather than uncover truth. It'd be why the end of the exchange. Neither side had delivered the kind of resolution viewers might expect from a courtroom. No dramatic confession appeared. No decisive proof was unveiled. Instead, what remained were competing interpretations of the same moment. For Schiff and his supporters, the unanswered questions themselves were evidence that something might be wrong. For Bondi and her allies, the refusal to accept official explanations showed that critics had already decided the outcome they wanted. When the gavel eventually signaled the close of the segment, the room returned to a quieter atmosphere. Another senator prepared to speak about a completely different issue, but the tension from that confrontation lingered. Clips of the exchange began circulating almost immediately, with commentators dissecting every sentence and every pause. And that may have been the real significance of the moment. The hearing wasn't just about a specific allegation or a single investigation. It was about the deeper divide shaping American politics. On one side are those who believe institutions must be aggressively questioned to prevent abuses of power. On the other side are those who believe constant accusations can erode trust in those same institutions. Some viewers walked away convinced Schiff had exposed troubling silence. Others believed Bondi had successfully resisted.
I was not in office. I was not confirmed when that was handled.
Interpretations spread rapidly
Deputy
across social media
Attorney General
and news
Blanch
coverage,
and
each
Director
reinforcing a different
Patel
version of the
said
story.
that there was no
What
evidence
happened in that hearing
that
room
Tom
was
Homan
more than an argument between two officials. It was a snapshot of a larger national debate about power, accountability, and trust. In a time when nearly every political moment is filtered through competing narratives, even the search for simple answers can become a battle. And the question that echoed throughout the hearing still hangs in the air for many watching from outside Washington. When politics and investigations collide so publicly, how does anyone separate truth from strategy? Because in a world where every answer is challenged and every silence is interpreted, the loudest voices may not always be the ones revealing the clearest reality. Buddy,